Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. It's 1914. The streets of Sarajevo are packed with people. The air is buzzing with anticipation as Archduke Franz Ferdinand's motorcade winds through the city. Suddenly, gunfire. The world will never be the same. Within weeks, Europe is at war, and within months, the conflict will engulf the globe. The war that was supposed to be over by Christmas instead drags on for years, reshaping the modern world in ways no one could have imagined. Welcome back to Gardner's History Garden, AP World History Podcast. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most intense and transformative periods in world history, the global conflicts of the 20th century. From the trenches of World War I to the firebombed cities of World War II, we'll explore how these wars started, how they changed societies, and how their consequences still shape the world today. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear understanding of the key causes, events, and effects of these conflicts, and of course, how to tackle them on the AP exam. Our journey begins in the 20th century, a time of rising tensions in Europe. Imagine a continent like a massive powder keg, filled with centuries of rivalries, ambitions, and unrest. The fuse, a tangled web of militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism, otherwise known as Maine. But how did Europe get to this point? Let's break it down. Nations didn't just prepare for war, they embraced it as an inevitable and even noble endeavor. The great powers of Europe, Britain, Germany, France, and Russia, were engaged in an intense arms race. Countries built up vast armies, poured money into naval fleets, and developed devastating new weapons. In 1914, Germany had the largest and most modern land army, while Britain dominated the seas with its powerful navy. The belief: the bigger your military, the more respect and power your command. Europe wasn't just a collection of independent nations. It was a web of promises. If one country was attacked, its allies were bound to defend it. This meant that a small conflict had the potential to escalate into a full-scale war. Two major alliance systems during this period were the Triple Entente, which included France, Russia, and Britain, and the Triple Alliance, which was Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. One wrong move, and these alliances would turn the entire continent into a battlefield. Beyond Europe, another battle was brewing, the fight for global dominance. The major powers had spent decades carving up Africa, Asia, and the Middle East in search of resources and markets. Britain had India, France controlled large parts of Africa, and Germany wanted more colonies of its own. This fierce competition created constant friction. The European powers eyeing each other suspiciously and preparing for the day when they might have to defend their overseas interests. Perhaps the most explosive force of all, national pride ran deep, and ethnic groups within large empires demanded self-rule. In Austria-Hungary, Slavic nationalists wanted independence. In the Balkans, Serbia envisioned a united Slavic state, free from Austrian influence. And this, right here, is where our spark is struck. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand lit the fuse. It's June 28th, 1914. The streets of Sarajevo are alive with excitement. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, is visiting with his wife Sophie, but hidden among the crowd is Gavrilo Principi, a 19-year-old Serbian nationalist, armed with a pistol. As the Archduke's car makes a wrong turn, fate intervenes. Principi seizes the opportunity. 2 gunshots ring out. Within minutes, Franz Ferdinand and Sophie are dead. The world holds its breath. Austria-Hungary blames Serbia with Germany's backing declares war. Russia mobilizes to protect its Slavic ally. Germany sees this as a threat and declares war on Russia and its ally France. When Germany marches through Belgium, Britain enters the fray. Within weeks, Europe is engulfed in a war. The battlefield is unlike anything the world has ever seen. Gone are the grand cavalry charges of past wars. Instead, soldiers dig into trenches stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland. The Western Front turns into a nightmare of mud, rats, and disease. Machine guns mow down anyone who dares cross no man's land. Our artillery pounds enemy positions day and night. And then there's the gas. Chlorine and mustard gas silently but deadly suffocate soldiers in their own trenches. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, Russia struggles against Germany and Austria-Hungary, suffering massive casualties. The Ottoman Empire joins the fight, opening up new battlefields in the Middle East. The war spreads beyond Europe, involving colonies and soldiers from Africa, India, and beyond. By 1917, the world is exhausted. Millions have died, but just when Germany seems to be gaining ground, the United States enters the war, tipping the balance in the favor of the Allies. By November 11th, 1918, the guns finally fall silent. The war is over, but peace comes at a heavy price. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919. The victors, led by Britain and France, impose harsh terms on Germany. The Treaty of Versailles forces Germany to take full blame for the war, pay massive reparations, disarm its military, and surrender its colonies. The humiliation and economic burden will later fuel resentment and set the stage for even greater conflict. The war marks the end of an era. The once mighty Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire, and Russian Empire all collapse. New nations emerge from their ruins, but many borders are drawn hastily, creating fresh tensions that will boil over into years to come. World leaders vow to never let such a catastrophe happen again. The League of Nations is created, meant to ensure lasting peace, but without the United States, which chose not to join, the League lacks real power. Its failure will become painfully clear in the years ahead. World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. Instead, it planted the seeds for an even deadlier conflict just 2 decades later. The scars it left on nations, on borders, and on human lives shape the world we live in today. As we reflect on this moment in history, one question lingers. Could it have been avoided? Or was Europe always destined to march towards war? With guns finally silent, the world attempts to heal, but the 20s and 30s are anything but peaceful. Instead of lasting stability, the period between the wars is defined by economic collapse, rising extremism, and global tensions. The Treaty of Versailles was supposed to prevent another war, but instead it sows the seeds for the next one. In 1929, the U.S. stock market crashes, triggering the Great Depression, a crisis that spreads across the world. Banks fail, businesses collapse, and millions lose their jobs. Countries reliant on American loans, like Germany, are hit especially hard. In cities across the world, breadlines and mass unemployment become symbols of economic despair. Germany, already struggling under the weight of harsh reparations from the Treaty of Versailles, faces another catastrophe: hyperinflation. By 1923, the German mark is so devalued that people carry wheelbarrows of money just to buy a loaf of bread. Savings become worthless overnight, fueling public outrage and a desperate search for a strong leadership. As democratic governments struggle to respond to the crisis, authoritarian leaders seize the moment, promising stability, strength, and national revival. In 1922, Benito Mussolini and his fascist followers march on Rome. He establishes a dictatorship, crushing opposition and promoting aggressive nationalism under the slogan, "Believe, Obey, Fight." A failed artist and World War I veteran, Adolf Hitler rises to power by exploiting economic despair and national humiliation. By 1933, he becomes chancellor and quickly consolidates control, blaming Jews, communists, and the Treaty of Versailles for Germany's struggles. Joseph Stalin transforms the USSR into a totalitarian state. His 5-year plans industrialize the nation, but at an enormous human cost. Mass purges, forced labor camps, and engineered famines kill millions. Yet, Stalin maintains an iron grip through propaganda and terror. While dictators rise, the world's democracies hesitate. Still haunted by the horrors of World War I, instead of confronting aggression, they turn to appeasement, hoping that giving dictators what they want, they will prevent another war. Japan invades Manchuria in 1931, defying international law. The League of Nations condemns the action, but does nothing to stop it. In 1935, Mussolini invades Ethiopia. Again, the League of Nations protests, but no real action is taken. And then, in 1938, Hitler annexes Austria and demands the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with large German-speaking population. Britain and France give in, signing the Munich Agreement, believing this concession will satisfy Hitler. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returns home, famously declaring, "Peace for our time." Spoiler alert, Chamberlain was wrong. Less than a year later, Hitler's armies invade Poland, and the war is at war once again. September 1st, 1939, the world watches in shock as German tanks roll into Poland, using a ruthless strategy called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Germany smashes through Polish defenses with a combination of fast-moving tanks, aircraft, and infantry. Just 2 days later, Britain and France declare war on Germany. World War II has begun. The Axis versus Allied powers. This time, the world is divided into two opposing alliances, the Axis and Allied powers. The Axis powers are made up of Germany, Italy, and Japan, while the Allied powers are Britain, the Soviet Union, the United States after 1941, and others. In the first 2 years of the war, Hitler's military seems unstoppable. Poland falls in just weeks. Denmark and Norway are next. Then, in 1940, German forces invade France. The French, unprepared for the speed of the attack, crumble. By June, Paris falls and France surrenders. Britain now stands alone against Hitler. Despite early victories, Hitler makes a crucial miscalculation in June of 1941. He launches Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. He expects a quick victory, but the vastness of Russia and the brutal winter slow his force. The Soviets fight fiercely, and by 1943, the Battle of Stalingrad marks a turning point. The German advance is stopped, and the tide begins to turn in favor of the Allies. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Japan expands aggressively, taking territory in China and Southeast Asia. Then, on December 7th, 1941, Japan launches a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, devastating the U.S. Pacific Fleet. The next day, the United States declares war on Japan, officially entering the conflict. Days later, Germany and Italy declare war on the United States. Now, the war is truly global. By 1944, the Allies push back. The U.S. and Britain launch D-Day, June 6, 1944. This is a massive invasion of Nazi-occupied France. By April of 1945, Soviet forces enter Berlin. Hitler, realizing the war is lost, commits suicide on April 30th. Germany surrenders a week later. In the Pacific, Japan fights fiercely, refusing to surrender. The United States uses a brutal island-hopping strategy culminating in the Battle of Okinawa. But rather than launch a costly invasion of Japan, the United States makes a terrible decision: to drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima, August 6th, and Nagasaki, August 9th of 1945. On August 15th, Japan surrenders, and World War II is over. The war leaves the world forever changed. The Holocaust is revealed. The Allies liberate concentration camps, exposing the full horrors of Hitler's genocide. Over 6 million Jews murdered, along with millions of others. The United Nations is founded in 1945 to promote peace and prevent another world war. The Cold War begins. The United States and the Soviet Union emerge as rival powers, setting the stage for decades for geopolitical tension. World War II may be over, but a new kind of conflict is just beginning. Studying history means remembering a lot of names, dates, and events, but using mnemonics can make it much easier. Here's a few ways to help you lock in key concepts. Use the idea of Maine for the causes of World War I. So, we went over these in the presentation, but think of World War I as a ticking time bomb, and the fuse is Maine, M-A-I-N. Those stand for militarism, so countries built massive armies and stockpiled weapons. Alliances, these are secret treaties, meant local conflicts could explode into global wars. Imperialism, European powers clashed over colonies and resources. And nationalism, people wanted independence, leading to tensions within the empire. When moving to World War II, you can look at those beginning causes as give, or G-I-V-E. So why did Britain and France allow Hitler to take so much land before World War II? They were trying to avoid another devastating war, but their give strategy failed. Germany demands, so Hitler wanted the Rhineland, Austria, and the Sudetenland. You have ignored aggression. The League of Nations did nothing about Italy invading Ethiopia. V. Versatile excuses. Western leaders justified appeasement to avoid conflict. And finally, eventual war. Despite efforts, World War II still broke out. And remembering the Axis powers, remember GIJ, so Germany, Italy, Japan. Now let's talk exam strategy. Understanding content is great, but understanding how to apply it in different types of questions is key. For multiple choice questions, focus on cause and effect of wars, key treaties, the important leaders. Expect questions like, what was the main causes of the Treaty of Versailles? Hint: Germany's resentment that's going to lead to World War II. For SAQs or short answer questions, you may see something like, explain one political impact of World War I. Mention how monarchies collapsed, like in Germany and Russia, and were replaced by new governments. For DBQs, you may see something like, compare economic responses to the Great Depression in Germany versus the United States. For this, use specific policies. Germany turned to militarization and dictatorship, while the U.S. used the New Deal. For LEQs or long essay questions, you may see something like, how did the 20th century wars reshape global politics? Compare the effectiveness of the League of Nations versus the United Nations, showing how World War II led to a more structured global organization. And that's a wrap for the global conflicts. Wars don't just happen overnight. They are the result of complex causes, shifting alliances, and political miscalculations. By understanding these connections, you'll dominate the AP exam and see how history shapes our world today. Next time, we'll tackle the Cold War and decolonization, a whole new era of political tension and independence movements. Keep up the great work, and remember to like and subscribe, and every great historian started as a student like you. Keep studying. You're building a very solid foundation for success.